Welcome in. It is day number 3 of Fantasy Sports Today right here at fantasyguru.com. Kyle, Elfrink and Ray Flowers with you. And big news to start today's program. We've learned, Ray and I, that we've got more power than we ever expected to have. We have so much power, Ray Flowers, that it was just 24 hours ago on this very same stage, whether you're at Facebook or YouTube or Twitter or somewhere else. Ray, 24 hours ago, we were saying, what the hell are the Raiders doing with Josh McDaniels? And what do you know, Ray? 12, 14 hours later, Josh McDaniels walking the plank. The Raiders have forced him into the choppy waters of the sea, and they're going to look for a new coach in the middle of the season.
Yeah, like an idiot, on Halloween. Happy Halloween, belated Halloween, all that kind of stuff. I'm going to bed last night after the festivities, watching the horror movies and everything like that. And like an idiot, I pull my phone out and, here I go. And I'm checking the news. And what do you know? Midnight firing. So, yeah, it's like, wow, okay. It's always classy when you get fired at midnight, too. Like, it's like that's, I guess, Mr. Davis's move there. But, yeah, we did touch on this yesterday on the show. You're right. And I guess maybe Mark Davis is a follower of the show. I don't know.
Yeah, he's a follower of many things, including bad haircuts, to which I know a lot about. So he probably follows us as well. And it's warranted. I mean, Ray, we're always supposed to say, oh, nobody wants someone to lose a job. That's our job is not to soothe feelings here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Our job is to tell you what's going on. And Ray, just to reiterate what's going on is the team sucks. The offense sucks. The offense is horrible. The offense has spent money to be better, and they're like the worst in football. Right now, here are the numbers. They are 30th in points scored. They are 31st in yardage this year. They are bottom 3 in total turnovers. These are all the offensive numbers. They are dead last in rushing yardage, which is frightful. Let's see. Anything else? Points, they're bad there. They barely run the football. When they throw the football, there's no success there. They have 12 touchdowns. They have 12 touchdowns, Ray, through what is it now? 8 games, I think, for the Raiders. That's infuriating when you've gone out and spent money on Garoppolo, Devontae Adams, you've given him money to Josh Jacobs. Like, one other thing is, like, where's Hunter Renfrow gone? This guy who had 90 catches, Ray, and now he can't get to 20. I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with this offense. And yesterday I pointed the blame at Josh McDaniels, and I'm glad Mark Davis did the same thing. He is supposed to be an offensive wizard. And the cape seems to have disappeared, or he's got to find a new hat. I don't know what it is. He and the GM, by the way. I guess the GM that hired him, he got canned as well. So they kind of really cleaned house on Halloween night.
Well, yeah, and you know how this goes. Now we're hearing they're going to make a change of quarterback too, and all. Once you start making 86 changes at once, it's over, right? There's the hope is gone. It's not even subtle. It's just we're blowing this thing up in the middle of the season, and sometimes coaches and players don't gel. Sometimes the combination looks good on paper, but when then you get out there, it just doesn't work. I think that though the longer we go through this process, and we've been again doing this together, I think for 14 years, Kyle. The longer we go through this, the more I realize that I used to think college football was controlled by the coaches and pro football was controlled by the players. I think it's all controlled by the coaches. I really do. I think the schemes and the way things are set up, it's so important.
Success and failure kind of
correct.
thing.
Yeah, correct. And I'm not just talking, in the locker room. I'm talking actual game action on the field. And I think that, because we focus in the fantasy space on the quarterback or the running back, but I think those coaches and the staffs have such a massive impact on what's going on. A lot of times when changes like this are made, even if a team's not very good, they respond positively because the new brain trust, if you will, is saying things in a different way or even just scheming things in a different way.
You mentioned this quarterback thing. As down as I am on this entire offense and the whole rigmarole, if you will, in Vegas, they should not be making a move to Aiden O'Connell, should they? Doesn't Garoppolo? I know he's been bad. Okay, he has. But, Ray, I think Jimmy Garoppolo, aren't we at the point where we give him more than 5 bad games? He's been beat up, I feel like, the whole year. And maybe this is the admission that he's too beat up to succeed. Maybe that's the case here. And if that's the decision, and we're not hearing that, but, maybe this guy's just too hurt. He's playing at 80%. He can't get it done. And that would make a little bit of sense because he's looked horrid. It hasn't. I know Jimmy Garoppolo is not a top 10 quarterback, but he's not even a top 20 quarterback right now with the way he's playing. So I kind of think there's a little meat on that bone, right, of the idea that he's playing hurt and almost too hurt. And maybe that's why you make the switch to O'Connell. But if that's not the reason, if they're saying, hey, new coach, new GM, new quarterback, that's bad reasoning. So I applaud the Raiders for getting rid of McDaniels and starting anew. I don't applaud them if they're making the move to Aiden O'Connell as part of this rebirth or this, hey, clean slate. And now we're going to, just build things differently in Vegas. I'm not applauding that at all.
No, and I don't think, and it's really interesting with Jimmy Garoppolo, who's, by the way, so good looking, that he constantly, people tend to focus on with him. And it's interesting because a lot of players, they focus on the opposite. Most players, they focus on what they do well, right? And I feel like in the case of Garoppolo, people focus on what he doesn't do well. And it's like, is he an elite talent? No. Does he have great arm strength? No. Is he going to elevate the play of his teammates to the point where they can't lose? No. He's 43-20 as an NFL quarterback. 43-20. His head coach went 12-25. Like, Jimmy Garoppolo wins games. Mm-hmm. And I know that it's not just the quarterback and all these other things, but 43-20 is a damn good winning percentage. So he does something right. He's a competent NFL quarterback in an era, as we discussed earlier in the week, where I said, like a quarter of these quarterbacks just stink. Like, they're not even NFL ready, really. They're just being out there because there's not an option. Jimmy Garoppolo is better than most of those guys, at least if he's healthy.
And as we look forward, it's always this is the wild situation, Ray. It's like, an open NFL job in a big market. Like, I know not TV market, but it's an exciting market. It's a place that you can get a fan base. It's fresh. It's new. The stadium's beautiful. Amazingly, the Raiders, leave Oakland, and now they're making gobs of money in Vegas. Like, they're doing really well as a business. On the field, it's a mess. And really, Ray, it's kind of been messy for years now. There's a couple blips and pops here for the Raiders franchise where, they're in the playoffs or they have like a 2 or 3 year run. But overall, Ray, it's been mostly ugly this entire century. And if you're a prospective NFL coach, I wonder how attractive this job is. Like, dealing with the owner is just one looming issue you've got when you take this job with the Raiders. Is whether it's fair or not, we all kind of wonder, is this guy got his head screwed on straight? And I don't know if that's fair. I think Mark Davis is probably kind of a fun guy on a one-on-one basis. Like, if you got to know him or if you're buddies with him, I could see Mark Davis being one of the more enjoyable NFL owners to hang out with. But I don't know if he's a good NFL owner. So that's the issue for any coach. It's like, if it's your first go around, do you really want it to be with the Las Vegas Raiders? Or would you rather it be your second or third, your rebound job? I'd rather it be my rebound job than my first job to walk in there with the Raiders.
Well, it's tough too. And you were obviously aware of this, Kyle. These guys are all bazillionaires. They have all this money, this power, and success.
They do not have hairstylists, though.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe Davis walked into it because of the family and doesn't pay for a barber. Not that I'm one to talk.
But he always has like a hot chick on his shoulder. Have you noticed it? I don't know. How's that work? Yeah, do they still have those businesses where you hire like a walker? Isn't that what they call the lady? They're a walker. Okay. Maybe he just has invested in the walker business.
When you're when people suck up to you in whatever form they do. And if you're an NFL owner, people do, right? I think it's hard to step back because, these people are used to being involved day to day with everything. And most of them are probably control freaks. That's how they've gotten to the point that they're super successful. So how do you choose a coaching staff and choose a bunch of players and just back off? Like, why is Jerry Jones's media whore and the whole thing? Why is he out there making personnel decisions and stuff? You're the owner of the team. Hire good people. Let them do their jobs. And this is in all sports. I mean, all businesses, whether you are in sports or whether you work at the tire factory, there's a pecking order, right? And you got it. Your boss tells you, the secondary boss, the third boss, down, whatever. Mm-hmm. People have to fill their roles. And I think a lot of times head coaches, they're unduly influenced from voices from above. And, you have to get someone who's strong enough to say, look, this is what I'm going to do. If you don't want it, don't hire me. But you're right. The job there is not, it looks on the surface very tempting, but I don't know if it's someone that, has got a hopeful career in the NFL if they really want to dive in there with their first go round.
So we sent the word out yesterday here on Fantasy Sports Daily, and the axe fell actually early on Wednesday morning. As Ray noted, it was right about midnight, I guess, out west, but early Wednesday morning out east. Josh McDaniels is out. GM Dave Ziegler is out as well, and the Raiders will move forward. Sometimes this is a bonus for you, the fantasy player, because whoever comes in, and it'll be an interim coach, but whoever comes in, they usually come in with the order that, hey, get Devontae Adams going. Hey, get Josh Jacobs going. And whereas Josh McDaniels would maybe push back on that just a bit, no, I want to run my offense and be innovative and do things that people don't expect. And, hey, I got to change this and that, like he's too close to the situation. A new guy comes in and it's like, okay, my one goal here is get Josh Jacobs to 4.5 yards per carry. My one goal here is to get 10 targets to Devontae Adams. The expectations are nil. I mean, with the Raiders keep losing, who cares? You're the interim coach. If the Raiders somehow turn it around, maybe you got a shot to be not only the coach in Vegas, but somewhere else in the NFL. So it's like a good spot to be an interim coach because the expectations are nothing. The boat is sinking right now. You can't do any worse. And you're definitely not Jeff Saturday. So people will appreciate that you have come in as an interim coach. Anyway, that is where we start on this edition of Fantasy Sports Daily. What else do we got? Well, Ray loves to, for those who are viewing us here on a Wednesday, Ray loves to post what we've got coming your way. So let's take a look at that. Mention that Josh McDaniels is now searching for a new job. We got some other NFL news and notes. Trading deadline came and went yesterday. So. We had some big defensive players switch teams. Nothing really shocking on offense. We did get our answer in Minnesota as to what the Vikings are going to do under center. So we'll discuss their option and their choice. We are done with 8 weeks. We are getting set for week 9. Why not? Let's take a look at some halfway home numbers in the NFL. Some things that might, to an extent, surprise you a bit. As we do on Wednesdays here, we'll take our first look at some week 9 spreads and totals. I don't know if you've looked at these totals, Ray. It's kind of sad. Ray, they're
pretty low.
Oh my gosh. 30s everywhere, Ray. There is nothing. We got Buffalo, Cincinnati, which is 48.5. Okay. We have Miami and Kansas City, which is 50.5.
In a foreign country.
Every other game, Ray, is like 44 or lower. No. And we've got Thursday night is a 36.5. We have a 37. We have a 37.5, a 39.5, a 40, a 37.5, a 41.5. If I'm Roger Goodell and I'm looking at those game totals, Ray, okay, defense is cool, whatever. But people pay to see scoring. That's hideous, is it not? And people will say, well, injured quarterbacks, this and that. I don't blame it. I get it. The quarterbacks are injured, but NFL 37? That's embarrassing for any week, let alone the middle of the season.
Are you in? I know other people have written articles about this, and I know it's a big vein of thought in the fantasy space. The idea that this year's been a rough year for football, right? There's not a lot of there's been great plays and highs and all that, but there's a lot of crappy football out there right now. And some of it's injury.
That every single year, right?
Well, maybe, but I mean, there's crappy football out there. There's crappy quarterback play out there. There's crappy play calling out there. There's crappy officiating out there. I mean, there's a lot of crap. And we've talked about this. Defenses they've got things locked in. They're phenomenal athletes. They scheme things up, all that. The offense is starting to lose a little ground. Even though, let's remember, you can't touch an NFL quarterback right now without getting a penalty. You can't touch him. Even the defenseless receiver, guys get hit and they get. This game is geared toward offense. So when everything is geared toward offense, and like you're saying, we're still seeing numbers 37, 38. That ain't good.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not going to say this year is the trend. Like, I'm not going to jump to that. I'm just saying this is bad this week. Okay. And you're right. It hasn't been great for NFL offenses. But if we see like 5 years to 10 years of weeks where we have 3-4 games in the 30s, because I got news for you. The blaming the injured quarterback, that's probably not stopping. Okay. It's football. They're going to get injured. That's just the way it is. So every year we're going to have injuries. Okay. So we know that it's baked in. So I don't want to blame injuries. What is different? And Ray, I wonder if we've reached the tipping point where in this very popular sport, this sport that just rules the roost as far as any fan is concerned, and certainly TV is concerned, is the tipping point. Hey, we're playing games 18 weeks. We're traveling to Europe. We're playing Thursday nights. We're playing Sunday nights. We're playing Mondays. We're playing on Black Friday now for the first time this year.
Saturday.
They're giving the TV and the audience what they want, but the product can't seem to meet the level of how much we're getting. It's like any business, Ray. Taking that leap to, McDonald's. Okay, we all mock McDonald's. Ha, 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 McDonald's. It's junk food. It's terrible. Ray, probably, when was the last time you had McDonald's, Ray?
I like once every year and a half or so, my lady wants to get chicken nuggets. So maybe 2 years ago, but without her, I would never go.
When I travel, going through places, I have a hankering for McDonald's. I probably, on the average, do it twice a month. And I don't think it's terrible. I will go to the mat for the quarter pounder with cheese. I think it's actually pretty damn good. But what's incredible about McDonald's, Ray, is it became hugely popular and they had to scale. And, an impressive thing about McDonald's is I can go to France and get a hamburger and it's going to taste like a McDonald's hamburger.
True.
And I can go to Fayetteville, Arkansas, and it's going to taste exactly the same. Like, it's incredible that they have, and there are reasons for that. They have engineered the ability to do this. But what I'm getting at is they scaled and they kept it the same. It's very difficult to do that. And I wonder, Ray, if the NFL is running into that just a bit. And hey, they're a billion-dollar business. They know what they're doing. But Ray, it's almost like they want to create more and give more and provide more and reach every corner of the world and every sense that anybody has. Let's get into the attention span of everyone. And you just look at these numbers and you look at some of the football we've seen, and it's like, are they ready for that? It's like when sports expand, going from 2 extra teams, can the talent pool support it? And there's a little bit of that going on, I think, with the NFL right now.
Oh, absolutely. And we focus a lot, I have at least, on especially Thursday night football and how, the league has made this, you laid it out perfectly. They made the decisions business-wise, fan-wise. They don't have any apparent care for the players because playing a football game 3 days after you played your last one, that ain't right. It's just not, the body is not ready for the players. They will tell you that. A lot of the players will tell you it's not even until like Friday that they start feeling normal. They're playing on a Thursday. Then you start talking about, we were discussing coaching staffs maybe being a little overwhelmed or not necessarily. Now we got 3 days to implement everything. We're traveling too. Like what is this? Like we don't even have our normal, so we've cut the work week in half. So of course the product is going to suffer. Of course it's inevitable. Then you start, like you said, talking about, for some unknown reason, the NFL is obsessed. They don't like $7 billion in North America. They're obsessed with Europe. They're obsessed with it. Players traveling across the seas and all. Who wants to do that? Like, that doesn't, why? What is the point of that? So the product is going to suffer. And you're right. Part of the reason we could talk about coaching and players and all that, X's and O's, but part of the reason is absolutely the way the league has decided to deploy these games.
Yeah. So we'll take a look at those spreads and those numbers coming up in a bit. Also, a little bit of baseball. Ray's latest rumblings piece is up at fantasyguru.com. He's got some thoughts on some players involved in the World Series. Tonight could be the night. Texas may win their first ever title. I think it's 51 years has that organization been around, looking for their first ever title. But if you know anything about the Rangers, don't count your chickens just yet. Maybe Snakes Alive will pull out a victory in Game 5. At least send it back to Arlington. There's always that urge, and I don't know. Maybe players think this way, Ray. I would assume they don't, but like, isn't it way better to win the title in front of your home fans? Like, is Texas really going to be like pissed off if they lose tonight and have to go back to Arlington and get to celebrate with their home fans? To me, I guess winning a World Series, who cares? And hey, in Arizona, you get to take a bath. You get to go over the wall in right field and jump in the pool. But I always think it's weird when a visiting team, whatever the sport is, wins a title in front of fans who don't really care, or fans who are upset that you're winning the title. That I don't know if it happens. I'd have to talk to the winners, but it would seem to take a bit away. I think if you compare the feeling you get when it's at home winning the title, which is like a 10 out of 10, if you win the title on the road, Ray, it's like an 8 out of 10. Still good, but it could be better.
And I don't have any data to support this offhand, but doesn't it seem like the winners are always on the road? It's like it's frequently, right? And it's like you hear them cheering, and there's like silence. You can hear the players yelling because there's no fan noise. I mean, you want to win. I don't think any player would ever say, "Oh, let's just lose it and win at home." But at the end, if you lose the game, you didn't have. I mean, like you didn't lose a player, Odolis Garcia. You didn't have your, Jose Leclerc's arm flew off. Like, if it wasn't that, we just lost the game. Yeah, I mean, it's you got the great odds of winning with the lead they have, and who wouldn't want to do that at home? I mean, we got to remember too. We're going on what we start this in February. Like, this is a long campaign, and who wouldn't want to share that with their fans?
Yeah, so we'll see. Maybe they'll just say, "Screw you, Kyle," and win it in front of the Arizona fans tonight. Hey, a title's a title if you're the Texas Rangers. But that game will get going a little after 8 o'clock, and we'll sneak in a little baseball before the conclusion of things here at Fantasy Sports Daily. Before we jump all in to NFL news and notes, looking at some halfway home numbers. Ray, you are the tech wizard. Couple of changes, couple of additions, not changes, couple of additions that we've got for where people can find us, right?
Yeah, you might actually be hearing us on one of those sources now, depending upon where you're listening. We obviously have the show on YouTube. It's 11 o'clock Eastern a.m. each morning here at Elite Plus Network. Obviously, you're there, you're watching. Okay. We talked about it. We hinted at it, at least, about the hope that we would move this into the podcast realm, and we're doing that. So as of right now, you can search Fantasy Sports Daily. It comes up in Podbean, so we're available there. It's also available at Spotify. I'm looking at the Spotify page right now. It's beautiful. It's got our logo. It's nice and pretty blue. So right now, Podbean and Spotify have the Fantasy Sports Daily show, so you can listen, take it with you anywhere you want. We're also posting the show after on the website, so you can watch it there as well. But we're looking to add, and we're continuing to do that process behind the scenes to create a scenario where no matter where, basically, not 100%, no matter where you listen to your podcast, the Fantasy Sports Daily show will be available.
Now, I know the biggie people are wondering about. We are getting close to jumping onto that fruit service.
Correct.
That some people. Ray's working on that. He's dealing with customer service, I think, as they say.
Correct.
I am so glad Ray Flowers is handling this.
I am not glad I'm handling
that, Ray.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, my God. If I were doing this, Ray, people would have to dial into like a toll-free number to listen to us. We wouldn't be streaming. There would be no podcast. It'd be like, hey, call 1-800-RAY-KYLE.
Yeah.
Which I think would work. Yeah, 1-800-KYLE-RAY. Let's put me first, then Ray. And people would have to tune in and listen over their phone.
It'd be like the old Blog Talk Radio days where it sounded like we were on a crappy AM radio. Yeah, that'd be really good quality. Good job, Kyle. I'm glad we're doing it another direction.
Yeah. Glad that Ray is in charge of that. You can also comment. So if you got any questions, any thoughts, whatever, send them our way. We'd love to hear from you. Again, each and every day live at 11 a.m. Eastern. And then you can find them uploaded, saved, cataloged, whatever you want to say. They're available in a variety of places. And we'll continue to update you as we go through the coming days as to where you can find this live stream, this podcast throughout the World Wide Web and everything digital in 2023. Okay, let's dig into some NFL news and notes. Ray, we were wondering about the trading deadline. As noted, nothing dramatic. I mean, Derrick Henry is still a Titan. Saquon Barkley is still a Giant. Defensively, there were some big moves. I know you're San Francisco Giants, a big one getting Chase Young with Washington. Things did not really go according to plan for Chase Young in DC. Had some injuries, but man, putting him on San Francisco, name-wise, Ray, that's a pretty fearsome addition for the San Francisco 49er defense.
Yeah, it is. And it's, he's had a hard time, as you noted, staying healthy. I think that's been the biggest issue. And I know that because he's on my Dynasty League team. So I've struggled through that. Interestingly enough, now I have teammates because I also have Bosa. So I don't know if that's ideal, but it's ideal for the Niners because, I think that the Niners, I mean, at some point you have to realize what your personnel is. And, their defensive backfield's okay, but they make their hay up front, right? It's the D-line and the linebackers. That's where this team really shines. Fred Warner, Greenlaw, those guys in the middle, and then the guys up front. So adding Chase Young, to Armstead, to Hargrave, to Bosa. They're pretty fearsome up front now.
Yeah, Chicago adding Montez Sweat. I guess why not? Maybe they can sign him to a contract, get him slightly on the cheap. Let's see. Donovan Peoples-Jones goes to Detroit. Does that have fantasy impact, Ray? Does that tell you anything about Detroit and kind of where they stand with these receivers? Because they appear on the surface not to have like an overload of receivers, but it's kind of, I don't know, noteworthy that of all the things Detroit would look for, it would be another receiver to add to the fold.
Yeah, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown has a hard time staying healthy. He's beat up a lot. So I'm not that DPJ is anywhere near the same type of receiver, but St. Brown's beat up a lot. And, Khalif Raymond's a little guy. He's more of a trick play kind of guy. He's not someone you can lean on. Josh Reynolds is okay. He's nothing great. He's okay, right? I think this is really as much as anything a condemnation of Jameson Williams, who, I remember people wanted to draft Jameson Williams despite the suspension. He comes off the suspension, 5,000 questions over at fantasyguru.com about adding Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, it has been a monumental bust to date. Monumental bust to date. Now, maybe that changes. It's still very early in his career, but all he does is run fly routes, and he doesn't do it effectively. So I think the DPJ edition is them kind of saying, look, I know we were all planning on this guy, Williams, being part of our offense, but he just ain't getting it done. Yeah,
that's a good point. DPJ kind of has the same profile, if you will, of a Jameson Williams. And Donovan Peoples-Jones has, been given opportunities in Cleveland, and it never clicked. So we'll see if this opportunity clicks. Another line, Josh Reynolds. Josh Reynolds was given opportunities in LA, didn't work. Josh Reynolds was given opportunities in Tennessee, didn't work. Goes to Detroit. It's a little bit better. Not great, but a little bit better for him. So we'll see how that works out. Probably the most notable fantasy move, Ray, is what Minnesota did. And everybody's been kind of wondering over the last 48 hours, because this is an offense that features, Justin Jefferson, that features Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. It's pretty important for people to know who's going to fill in and cover for Kirk Cousins. We have our answer, Ray, and it's not a bad answer. Yesterday I sat here and said, gosh, whoever they get, it's going to be 70% of Kirk Cousins. It doesn't matter who they're able to get. They're not going to be what they were with Kirk Cousins. If that was the hope, Ray, okay, people are disappointed. They didn't get a stud. Josh Dobbs is the guy. The same Josh Dobbs who was handling duties for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I think Dobbs came out earlier this year, Ray, with Arizona, and it looked pretty good for a month. I've been watching a lot of Cardinals football here the last month or so, and I think the limitations of Dobbs has been exposed just a bit. That doesn't mean he's a bad quarterback. It just means he needs some talent around him. Ray, he's going to a place that has a lot more talent, I feel, than Arizona gave him. You've got running backs, you've got tight end, you've got wide receivers. I don't know if this is the absolute slam dunk that the Vikings could have hoped for, but I feel pretty good about it. And I feel better today about the second half for this Vikings offense, and specifically Hawkinson, Jefferson, and Addison, than I did 24 hours ago. So from that aspect, I think the Vikings did good to add Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, I loved Arizona. On the 29th, Dobbs was going to start. On the 30th, Clayton Tune was going to start. On the 31st, they traded Dobson. And then today, we still don't even know who the quarterback's going to be this week. Like their head coach has said 4 different things in the span of 4 days or 3 days. Dobbs is, like you said, I think you couched it well. Dobbs is okay. Is he better than what they have? I think he is.
Yeah.
So I think that they made an improvement there. They gave themselves a chance. Is he someone, and this is what we talked about yesterday when we were discussing the Vikings, or maybe it was Monday when the injury with Cousins. What does this do? Does this get them to 9-7? Just get into the playoffs? Maybe. They're not winning with Dobbs, okay. But they're going to be competitive. They'll give their team a chance. More directly for us in the fantasy space, I think that the winner here, not that he needed it, but it's TJ Hawkinson, because we've seen Dobbs just, pepper, whether it was McBride or Ertz at the tight end position. So Hawkinson's still going to get his 10 targets a week, it would seem. You have to feel a little bit better about Addison and Jefferson. I don't think that Dobbs is a pinpoint dart thrower. I don't think he's got great arm strength. I don't think he spreads the ball around the field necessarily very effectively. But I do have a little hope that his ability to run, because he's running for 40 yards every week. his ability to run might open things up just a little bit for the backfield. Maybe, maybe Madison and or Akers get a little bit more run because the defense has to consider now that the quarterback might take off.
We've seen anticipation this week, people picking up Will Levis. Minshew's been okay the last couple of weeks. People who maybe bailed on him are going back to Gardner Minshew. Josh Dobbs might be available, Ray. Does he, in a single QB setup, would you roster Josh Dobbs? I think I would. I think if my QB1 was like a top 6, top 7 kind of guy, I think Josh Dobbs as my QB2 would fit perfectly. I think he can be enough of that to where he could be the emergency QB2. I'd take a shot with him on my fantasy team.
Well, I think, and we're in that zone, right? We're back to buys this week. Another NFL great thing. We have buys and then we don't have buys. And then we have buys and we don't have buys. I don't know what they're doing. I don't like the idea in most cases, because this question comes up a lot. I don't like the idea of carrying 2 tight ends really ever. If you got Travis Kelce and you got to buy, you do what you got to do. But just carrying 2 tight ends, I don't like. I don't really like carrying 2 quarterbacks. I used to do it. I don't like doing it now. Now it depends. If your first quarterback is Derek Carr, okay. If your first quarterback is Josh Allen, who cares? Like, you don't need that second guy. You just pick up whoever's there that week. They're on bye and you're fine. So, again, to me, I'd rather keep a backup running back or a backup wide receiver who next week is now going to get 8 targets because so-and-so got hurt. Or next week is now going to get 15 touches because so-and-so got hurt. So I'd rather keep those guys. But if you are in the area of you're in a super flex league or just a 1 QB league where you do want to have that second quarterback, Dobbs is okay. I don't think he's going to move the needle substantially. I don't think he's going to fall behind substantially. And again, I think his point per game is right around 16 or something, right? He's right there in the middle like you talked about.
I was just looking at the Vikings schedule. This is a pretty smooth runway of the next 5 games for Josh Dobbs. Now, the back end, the final 4 games are rough. But the next 5 games for the Vikings, this would be considered the soft spot in the schedule. They go to Atlanta this weekend. They host the Saints. They go to Denver. They host the Bears. They go to Vegas. And that you're not facing, in effect, I guess the Falcons or Saints are a quote-unquote playoff contender. But it's because they're in a bad division that they're a playoff contender. But you're facing 5 at best mid-tier teams. 5 in a row. Like, there's not a... Now, after that, Ray, then it's Cincinnati, Detroit twice, and Green Bay. But there is a nice runway here to bring Jefferson back, to get Dobbs comfortable. I realize that no NFL game is a gimme. Okay, I realize that. But this is about a 5-game run as you could ever get in the NFL, Ray, of facing, in effect, mediocre opponents up until the middle of December right now for the Vikings.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I have not seen this, and maybe you haven't. I just had a brain cramp because it was Halloween. I haven't seen a definitive he's starting this week, right, Dobbs?
No, I haven't seen that. I think you throw him right in there, Ray. He's a vet. Mm-hmm. He should be able to learn a system. They got to win. They can't really afford to lose to teams like this. I think at the maybe you could start with the Jaron Hall kid and, maybe spot Dobbs
packages
comfortable with. I would send him out there. He's been playing every week. Like, I'd rather have a guy who's been watching the real game film and being attacked by opposing defenses over the last 2 months than going to Jaron Hall.
Yeah, plus he's got more experience and all that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just point that out for the fantasy because it's early Wednesday morning here as we're recording this. But yeah, I mean, I think again, improvement for the Vikings. I think it was a solid move. Is it a world-beating move? Was there a world-beating move to make? That kind of thing. So we'll see. I do also. I'll throw this trailer on this, Kyle. It's really fascinating to me that I don't know if it's predatory behavior or what, but they're like people. Anytime something happens, people want to make moves, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, I'm going to make a move. Do I trade for Jordan Addison now, or do I trade away Jordan? It's like, we don't even know what's going to happen. Like, you know what I mean? It's just so weird. Like, I'm going to make a trade. Now you really want Justin Jefferson, but you didn't want him if it was Kirk Cousins. Like, it's so weird. Like,
I think the reason, Ray, is the Jefferson owner is still saying, well, Josh Dobbs sucked. Whereas somebody else saying, no, I think Josh Dobbs is a little better than you think. It really comes down to what is the perception of Joshua Dobbs.
Right.
And maybe you still get a discount for an Addison or a Jefferson Whereas yesterday you get a discount on those guys, but you were like, gosh, I agree with everybody else. The QB situation is diabolical. It's pitiful. I can't survive. But now you may say, maybe you're a Josh Dobbs believer. And we all have different takes on guys, or we feel better, depending on how much we watch or follow. Maybe somebody's like, I believe in Dobbs. Instead of paying 100% for Jefferson, if I get him at 90, I'd be in. So I get it. I'm with you, Ray. It's like, I still think, am I searching these guys out? It's all specific to the offer and to the trade. But I feel better. I do about their prospects today, guys like Jefferson and Addison, than I did yesterday on the show.
Oh, and again, I think that's fair, but I also think let's be honest and clear about this too. Dobbs is not Kirk Cousins, right? And so he's not throwing the ball 42 times.
There's a reason he's on their third team in 2 months. Is
correct? There's a reason they didn't sell his jersey at the team shop with the Cardinals. He's not going to throw 42 passes a week. He's not going to throw for 330 yards and 3 touchdowns. It's not happening. So they're going to need to establish a running game. They're going to want to slow things down even more. They're going to see a lot of plays where they're snapping it with 3 seconds left on the clock. They're not going to be pushing things here. So the offense is just going to be different. And, that doesn't mean that Justin Jefferson doesn't get 10 targets a week. It's still going to happen. But there's a huge difference, 32 to 42 pass attempts. And the trickle down there ends up being Hockenson gets his work. Jefferson gets his work. Probably Addison gets his work. Probably. But KJ Osborne takes a hit unless, and this is something to point out too, unless there's a connection with the way Dobbs sees the field and the routes that Osborne runs, whether there's some kind of connection they develop on the practice field. That's another piece of this too. Jordan Addison might still continue to fly, might score a touchdown every other week, might win Rookie of the Year. KJ Osborne might be the guy from this point forward who's more effective with Dobbs under center. We don't know that for sure.
Getting Vikings in Atlanta coming up on this weekend. Let's see. Thursday night football gets things rolling tomorrow. That game is Tennessee-Pittsburgh. A couple of updates on the injury front there. For what it's worth, DeAndre Hopkins and Derrick Henry were both limited on Tuesday. I would treat that more as veteran days off. We'll see. I mean, I guess if Wednesday is more of the same, that could be an issue. But with Hopkins, it's a toe. With Henry, it's an ankle. So worth following. The expectation is they play. It sounds, Ray, like Kenny Pickett has a shot on Thursday night. We'll see. Rib injury is what he's dealing with. So both those situations worth following the news on Wednesday. And obviously tomorrow when we meet back here at Fantasy Sports Daily, we'll give you the latest and we'll also have a preview of that game. That is the first, what do we got this week? 14 games, I think it is. Yeah, because we got 4 teams that are on bye. Denver, Detroit, Jacksonville, San Francisco. All those 4 teams are off. That leaves us with a schedule of a Thursday nighter, a Sunday morninger, the usual 1 o'clock window, the usual 4 o'clock window, Sunday night and Monday night. Ray, let's look at the spreads and the totals, starting with Tennessee-Pittsburgh. Steelers favored by 2.5, 36.5. Now, I was lamenting these low numbers, Ray. I totally agree with that, by the way, 36.5. People picking up Will Levis. Do you like him this week? I mean, if you're picking up Will Levis, you're probably desperate under center. You're probably somebody who lost Kirk Cousins. I'm okay with starting him here. Obviously, it's not going to be as good as last week, but Pittsburgh is not all that good. They have a pass rush, but they've been giving up numbers to opposing quarterbacks. I don't love Levis. I don't think he's a QB1, but I could stomach starting him on Thursday night.
I think stomaching him is a good way to put it. I answer questions every week over at fantasyguru.com and start sits and all this kind of stuff. And I'm constantly amazed by some people I have Tua Tagovailoa and Justin Herbert. Who do I play? Right. And then there's other people. I have Sam Howell and Desmond Ridder. Like the spread is just so huge on the way teams are put together. Right. So in my world, like if I'm starting Will Levis, I'm in trouble in my world. In the overall fantasy space, is he a mid-level quarterback option this week? Yeah. I think we saw enough last week with his arm strength, and we talked about this on Monday, with his arm strength and with his reading the football field. The offense operated through the air. It was functional on the ground, something they haven't done much with Ryan Tannehill. I think, he's a mid-level QB2.
Yeah.
And, if you have to because of injuries or buys, you have to. I would try again. I don't look at him as a top 12 quarterback or anything this week.
Yeah, my biggest concern, you mentioned the long ball, and he has that ability. And last week, that throws off the numbers a bit when you see how he's throwing these touchdowns. Like, that's a game one kind of thing. Can they really do it a second time? The other issue is, TJ Watt and what these guys can do up front to get to you. Do you have time for these routes to develop, for you to air it down the football field 30 plus yards? That'll be a big thing with Levis. Sunday morning, Miami, Kansas City. I think that's a 9 a.m. Eastern kickoff from Frankfurt, Germany. Ray, who's got the better offense overall? Is it Dolphins? The Dolphins do, right? Dolphins, they're the better offense in this game against Kansas City.
I think they are. Yeah. Kansas City. Yes. Yes. And it'll be interesting to see if they try to get 300 yards to Tyreek Hill in his revenge game. I think that they're a better offense. I think that both offenses, though, it's very interesting. Both offenses at times are very effective running the ball. At other times, they don't really run the ball. So I think that the things have gelled a little bit better in Miami than they have in Kansas City this year.
50.5, by the way, is the total there. Chiefs are favored by 2.5. Then we get into the main slate on Sunday, where there's maybe one good game. Really. Seattle at Baltimore would be like the enticing game. Ravens are favored by 5.5 as the home team. The total there is 43. The next best total is 41 between Chicago and New Orleans. Hard to believe the Saints are favored by 7.5 against anybody, but here come the Bears to answer that call. Washington, New England, 40.5. Sam Howell against Mac Jones. Patriots are favored there, Ray. How about that? I guess they're the home team, but God, and Washington, they're tough, Ray, because anybody except Philly, they kind of look terrible. But against Philly, they look great. They're able to compete. I guess a team like New England on the road, nobody has any faith in the Commanders moving the football.
Well, and the Commanders, did shake things up, right? Sweat and Young are gone, so they lost a lot of their D-line. And you never know for sure what that does to the locker room, right? Do people rally and get pissed off? Are they just pissed off and don't care? And so maybe that's a little bit in here. But if they can be beat through the air, the Commanders, and without the ability to have those two guys putting pressure on Mac Jones, maybe that's part of it too.
Minnesota, Atlanta, we still don't know who the quarterback is for the Falcons. No matter who it is, the game total is 37. I don't think that's changing. Falcons are favored by 5.5. Arizona and Cleveland. We don't know the quarterback for Arizona. I don't even know if we know the quarterback for Cleveland. I guess Deshaun Watson has a shot. The Browns are favored by 8. What? That's a heavy favorite, Ray. 8 points.
Yeah, don't you think the number shrinks by the time the game kicks off? Like, Cleveland's a better team. I don't think there's any debate about that. But that's a pretty big spread, like you're saying, for both teams not really knowing even who's going to be under center for sure. Yeah.
The Rams are in Green Bay, storied franchises that are kind of craptacular right now. We don't know if Matthew Stafford's playing. Okay?
We don't.
Is there a theme emerging here? Let's see. Packers favored by 3. Game totals 39.5. Let's see. Tampa and Houston. That'll get the tails wagging. Texans are favored by 2.5. Game total is 40. Then we go into the late window. 3 games. The late window has one good game, I guess. You've got Indianapolis at Carolina. Colts are favored by 3. 44 is the total there. The Dallas-Philly game should be entertaining. Philadelphia at home favored by a field goal. The total is 46. Giants are in Las Vegas to take on the, I guess we can now say, Aiden O'Connell-led Raiders. Raiders are favored by 2.5 against the Giants. We don't know who the Giants quarterback is going to be. 37.5, Ray. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Our 5th game that is in the 30s. There are only 14 games. More than a third of them, Ray, have a game total solidly in the 30s.
Well, as we're discussing here, and as everyone knows, there are backup quarterbacks starting. There are teams where they don't even know who they're starting at quarterback. This plays into this an awful lot. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of what we talked about earlier with coaching and schemes and the way the game is being played, and then this uncertainty at the quarterback position, it's just going to torpedo these lines.
If you can make it through Sunday, you do have a good matchup Sunday night. Okay, you just got to stick around. Have faith in Goodell and the NFL. Buffalo is at Cincinnati. I just a guess here. We're going to hear a lot about the last time Buffalo was in Cincinnati. Would just be my guess. Sunday Night Football, Bengals favored by 2.5. The total there, oh my gosh, shootout, 48.5.
Woohoo!
And then Monday night, Chargers, Jets. God, what is up with the Chargers being everywhere in our face? Yikes!
And the only thing I like about the Jets is their helmet, by the way. Like, it's pretty sharp with the metallic green and everything like that.
Yeah, it is sharp.
The Chargers to me are a team that I always expect to find a way to lose, right? And I don't blame their quarterback, I don't blame the players, I blame their coaching staff. But yeah, that's not an overly exciting game to me.
Chargers favored by 3. Total there is 41.5. So that is where we stand. Your opening look at the numbers and some of the spreads. They're very, very low this week. It's about 3 straight weeks of low game totals, I should say. One thing we wanted to get to today, and we're going to break this up, I think, over 3 days. We want to look at some early numbers. I shouldn't say early. We're halfway through. It's no longer early. 8 weeks down, and for most of us, about 9 weeks to go. And that's if you make your championship round. For others of us, time's ticking. I mean, your playoffs probably start in week 15, maybe even earlier, depending on how your league is set up. So today we're going to look at some midway point QB numbers. Tomorrow on Fantasy Sports Daily, we'll tackle the running back position, some numbers emerging there. And then we'll get to the receivers and tight ends coming up on Friday. Ray, starting with some notable QB numbers. How about Tua Tagovailoa leading the NFL in passing yards? More than Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen. Is this purely a credit to the offensive game planning and scheming? Like Tua, Ray, I would have never, when he was drafted, no way, he's never going to lead the NFL in passing. Yet here we are in 2023. Tua is at the top of the list.
Yeah, and by the way, every Friday I have an article over at fantasyguru.com. It's called Coffin Corner, where I dive into numbers and such. So I really enjoy this. Hopefully the listeners, viewers do as well here on the show. I think that Tua, I think it's everything. And, if you watch, and they always make a big deal of this on the broadcast with the Dolphins, you need to disrupt his timing, right? If he can go take his 5-step drop, make a read, throw the ball to his space, he's going to pick you apart. Okay. You got to get him moving. You got to get pressure on him. You got to do that. But then you got to have your defensive backfield be able to cover Tyreek Hill running like a berserker around, creating open spaces. So I think that for the positive with Tua is that I think we're beyond the concerns about the head injury being something that's going to continually come up. Not saying he's not going to have another concussion or anything, but we're beyond the point that we're panicked when he gets hit. They've got weapons here, Tyreek Hill, Waddle. They've got a great scheme. So I'm not stunned, but I'm pretty darn surprised he leads the league.
Here's something stunning. Hold on to your britches here, Ray. Tighten your belt. Okay. Yep. Russell Wilson has more touchdown passes than Patrick Mahomes this year. Ray, I've been watching football every week. I sit on my rump every week. I watch all of the games. I talk about it here on the stream and the pod. I wouldn't have guessed that, Ray. I don't know if that's me being a lazy analyst, but I was stunned when I looked up and saw that we've got more touchdown passes by Russell Wilson than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
Does that tell you Mahomes? Wait a second. Well, is Mahomes worse than we think, or is Russell Wilson better than we think?
Yes. I think that, and I will say this, and we were very over at fantasyguru.com. And by the way, people can sign up with the promo code FSD20. FSD20 gets a 20% discount. Over there, we were really pro Broncos before the season began. And then the season started, and they were terrible. They were awful. They gave up a 70 spot to Miami. They're playing much better football now. And I don't think that in the second half of the NFL season that teams are really going to want to play Denver. I think they finally found their footing, and they're moving in the right direction. So I think that Russell Wilson's going to be basically what we said he was going to be at the end of the season. We said he was going to be QB 11 or whatever. I think he's right in that zone. I'm more concerned with Mahomes. And it's not Mahomes directly, because he's fine. He's Patrick Mahomes. It's everything else. And, we talked about this a lot, you and I, last year, about how they pieced it together and they made it work. And When you're piecing things together, even if you got a great coach and a great quarterback, eventually you need pieces. You can't just be piecing it together. So I'm concerned about Mahomes and his production because it's solid, but he wasn't drafted to be solid. And I don't know if the second half is going to be appreciably better than we've seen to date.
What has really helped him, Ray, and I don't sense, I mean, you're a little more in the trenches with the fantasy community and what they're saying. I don't sense people are like, oh, Pat Mahomes, he's killing me. That was such a wasted pick. I don't sense that.
I don't sense that either.
Yeah. And what saved him, Ray, I think we would be hearing more about that if he didn't have this rushing yardage. And it's not Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen. He's not really getting the touchdowns. But, Ray, just the simple fact that he's giving you, what do we got here? 234 yards rushing, which, pace, play this pace game. Let's say he gets to 450, which is actually below the pace he's at right now. But 450, Ray, would be far and away his best season rushing.
Yep.
And there's an outside shot at 500 here.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that's like 50 extra points, which over the course of 17 or 16 games is 3 to 4 points extra a week. That has been notable when you watch Patrick Mahomes is he, and it's not drawn up that way, but he's had a lot of big scrambles that have really supported his fantasy numbers this year.
Yeah. Well, think about that. 50 points for rushing. That's 12 touchdown passes, basically, if you have 4 points per touchdown pass. It's 12 touchdown passes. 12! So that would take him from 32 touchdown passes to 44 or whatever. So, yeah, it's a huge benefit. And I've argued for years, and you know this, and longtime followers of our work argue, we give way too much credit to running for quarterbacks. It skews everything. But in this case, his athleticism, while not overtly obvious to the Lamar Jackson zone, he's not running people over like Josh Allen. He gets the yards, like you said, and he's sneaky about it, and it helps boost his floor immensely when he struggles through the air.
You mentioned Lamar Jackson. Let's go there with our next eye-catching quarterback number. Said earlier that I would never have predicted Tua Tagovailoa to lead the NFL in passing when he was drafted. Ray, here's one that I wouldn't have predicted even 2 months ago. Lamar Jackson is completing 70.6% of his passes. And I was pretty nonplussed by this idea of Todd Monken's going to come in and just watch the Ravens offense. And I feel like for the most part, I've been proven correctly. They're kind of the same, and whether it's injuries or maybe it's not as dramatic of a switcheroo as we thought with the offense. It's kind of the same Ravens team, nothing dramatic here. What is dramatic though, Ray, is that completion percentage. Lamar Jackson's like in the low 60s, the mid 60s, almost 71%. I would never have guessed it. Does it change your thoughts on Lamar Jackson long term? Or are we still looking at him and saying, well, he's always had a good first 10 weeks, and then we get to week 12 and the injuries pile? Like that's when he always misses games, is late in the season. Is that just right now it's fine for Lamar Jackson, but is the key getting this guy through 17, 18 weeks?
Yeah, he hasn't had the runs yet either. That seems to pop up once a year or two in addition to the injuries. But yeah, he's, for whatever reason, had the injuries later in the year. That has been something that's been a huge hindrance to him. He played 12 games in 2021. He played 12 games last year. So that's big. The completion percentage, I mean, it's really interesting because they made such a big they made the OC change this offseason, and there's such talk about they're going to open things up and the offense is going to be more vertical and all this kind of stuff. He's got one game with 240 passing yards.
Yeah.
One. So the offense, he's completing a high percentage of his passes, but as a passer, the offense is not different. I mean, he's throwing for more yards than he did last year, but he's throwing for less yards than he threw for in 2021. So, I mean, I think that he still is a threat to score multiple touchdowns every single week. He's a threat to have 50-plus rushing yards every single week. It's nice to see what appears to be on the surface progression as a passer and the completion rate. But, I mean, yards per attempt is up a little bit. It's tying his career best set back in 2019.
The same thing, is it not?
Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah, so it's better than it was last year but it's not something where it's a huge step where it's like, wow, it's really changed this year.
Let's all go through a mental exercise here. And I'll give everybody a couple of seconds to come up with their answer. Who A leads the NFL in game-winning drives? Which quarterback? And B, I'm going to throw this as an additional piece of information. It's twice as many. He's had twice as many game-winning drives as any other quarterback in the NFL. So
I just looked it up. Wow.
I always love things like this.
I didn't know this one. I did not know this one.
And does game-winning drives mean you're good? I don't know. I mean, Joe Montana, Ray, his whole reputation is fourth quarter game-winning drive. Right. Now he did more than that, but that's kind of the Desmond Ridder, Ray. 4 game-winning drives this season. Nobody else in the NFL has more than 2. I don't know if that's enough. Arthur Smith needs to show up at the press conference and say, I'm sticking with Desmond Ridder because in the fourth quarter, there's no better quarterback in the NFL that I want under center than Desmond Ridder. And he can point to this stat, Ray. He won't get laughed out of the room like usual. He can point to this stat. He may still get laughed out of the room, honestly, but he should point to this stat at the next press conference.
I mean, he really should, because that's about all he could hang his hat on. Desmond Ridder is not a good NFL quarterback right now.
Is it okay? Here's the question. Right?
He's not.
Do you throw in the towel? Like, you're the Falcons. You drafted this guy hoping that he could be. You didn't want him to be a star.
Right.
Like, what round did they get him? Fourth round, third round, something like that?
Third round, 74th overall.
Yeah, so they drafted him to be adequate, middle tier. There's still a shot. How many starting? Was he played 12 games?
12 games. He's 6-6. Yep.
So everybody's done with this kid. He sucks, and I get it. Yeah, he doesn't look good, but I'd rather have him than Zach Wilson. I mean, I'd rather take a shot on Ridder. They didn't invest. Zach Wilson was the number 2 pick. He was supposed to be good. Ridder was a third round, more developmental guy. He's played 3 quarters of a season. And I feel like, Ray, everybody's like, oh, he sucks. He's done. Atlanta's got to move on from him.
Well, but this is something you and I have talked about for years. The way the expectations on quarterback are totally different than we were kids. We talk about Joe Montana waiting. We talk about Steve Young waiting. We talk about Brett Favre waiting. Aaron Rodgers, like these guys waited. And nowadays, boom, go. And the decisions are made so quickly because teams want to win on that rookie contract for the quarterback before they start paying him $35 million a year or whatever it is. It's not fair to say Desmond Ridder can't be an effective NFL quarterback. It's 12 games. I will tell you he stinks right now. I mean, he's got 7 fumbles. He's got 6 interceptions. He looks bad. How much of that is coaching too? Because you run that. They know he's limited in some respects. And it seems like they almost want to limit him more than that, too. You know what I mean? So he's got to find his footing at the NFL level. And 12 games, when we play 17-game seasons, that's not really enough to make a determination. But like you said, a lot of people do.
I'm in a distinct minority here. Everybody wants Taylor Heinicke this week now. Ray, I said even Sunday after they bench Ridder, I'd go back to Ridder this week. And I see what I can get for a half. And if it's ugly, okay, let's move to Heinicke, and maybe we stick with Heinicke. Mm-hmm. But I would have Ridder as my starting quarterback. And I think Smith's going to go that direction. He'll be criticized. People, it's the traditional, we want the backup. Bring in the backup. The starting guy sucks. I'd rather have Ridder out there this week. How about you?
When is the NFL, by the way, going to give us an answer on what happened with Bijan Robinson? They're investigating his injury that wasn't.
Hey, you're not supposed to bring up that stuff anymore.
Okay.
Just forget about it and move on.
I'll be like Arthur Smith, and I'll talk about world politics and global warming, which he did when they asked him about the question. My point is that Arthur Smith, we should find out. So by the time people hear this on demand or on podcast, over at Podbean or Spotify, whatever, we might know the answer to this question because he said he'd announce it on Wednesday. I don't know. I mean, and I don't know who's going to start, and I don't know if who starts is who finishes. Because Arthur Smith, all right, he's got something going on, and he's got a plan, and okay, but I don't think anyone really has a handle on what that is. Like, this week it's this guy, that week it's that guy. They're in the game. It's a 3-point game in the fourth quarter, and that's what he's trying to do every week. So he's coaching it. He's coaching it up to get that score there. He's coaching it down to get the score there. He wants it to be a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter. I would say that you go Desmond Ridder, because once you go away from Desmond Ridder, it's over. You can't go back to Desmond Ridder, right? So if he's healthy, play him. They can say, well, we want to let him rest because he had a head injury, so they do have an out if they wanted to start Heinicke.
I guess. I'm still struggling, honestly, with the idea that Arthur Smith draws up offensive plays instead of, like, drawing up living wills. Like, a guy named Arthur Smith, right? His name does not fit Arthur Smith.
He's got a mustache. Needs some glasses, like little tiny glasses, like
He's
a
kind of
CPA.
he doesn't even look like a football coach, does he?
He screams like one.
He doesn't. Again, I've never been in a football locker room as a high end player, but I would struggle. I think on the surface to get behind Arthur Smith. I just don't know. I mean,
yeah, I think that's
he
fair.
just doesn't look like a guy that I'm willing to follow into battle. Anyway, those are some QB numbers that matter halfway through. Tomorrow, we'll tackle the backfield here on Fantasy Sports Daily. Round it up with a little baseball as we near the end of the hour here. Tonight's the night, Game 5. Texas could wrap up the World Series. Simeon finally got going last night. Seager with another big moment. For those who haven't really been following, and I realize some in our audience are not, but Ray, this Ketel Marte thing's pretty impressive, isn't it? 20-game hitting streak in the postseason. It's impressive when you do that in the regular season. This guy's on an insane run. 2 more hits on Tuesday night.
Yeah, an all-time record. And I looked this up because someone asked in Discord over at fantasyguru.com about 10 days ago. Hey, Ray, weren't you really high on Marte? And I went back and looked. I had him 7th at second base this season in the fantasy space. And I looked at his NFBC's ADP, and it was 21st.
Oh, wow.
So I've wrote about Marte all preseason, say like this guy's going to have a good year. There's all kinds of reasons to expect him to bounce back, even if he doesn't hit 318 like he did a couple years ago. And he had a really impressive regular season. Then he's taken it to a whole other level in the postseason. And you know how this goes. Reputations are built in the postseason. Clayton Kershaw stinks because he can't get it done in the postseason. Ketel Marte is going to be a superstar because he got a 20-game hitting streak.
He'll probably be closer to 7th next year in ADP, coming off the year he had, and certainly this postseason. A couple of other house cleaning things. Alex Cobb of the Giants has elected for some hip surgery. That is going to knock him out for about 6 months. He won't be available in spring training, April. Who knows? I mean, May is kind of the hope, but you know how these things can go. Sounds like Justin Turner, who had a fairly decent walk year, is going to elect free agency. I think his player option was about $14 million. Justin Turner, I mean, does he get multiple years at like more than $15 million? And it's not official. It was just some reporting. I kind of think if I were Justin Turner, I'd take my $14 million and shut up.
Well, didn't he get he gets like a 6.7 buyout or something, or $7 million buyout, so he gets free cash if he leaves.
Yeah.
He could probably get a 2-year deal. And, I mean, he's
22 million, maybe.
He'll be 39 later this month. So that's getting up there. But performance wise, he's basically been the same guy for a long time. And so someone's probably willing to pay him. He's basically a first baseman now. I know he played second base 10 times, which is pretty surprising. But he's basically a first baseman DH. So that might limit him on some teams. But yeah, he'll probably look to get a 2-year deal and get, like you said, get $30 million on the 2-year deal, get the $7 million buyout, and come out ahead.
And finally, to kind of bring this thing full circle, we were talking about the Raiders canning Josh McDaniels, and Ray kind of made the statement, the importance of coaching. He's starting to slide into that. In baseball, the importance of coaching. Craig Counsell, who is a free agent as a manager, has visited with the Mets and the Guardians. Brewers are still interested. Ray, I look at Craig Counsell and I think Mets, and I know that's the logical, David Stearns is the GM and that relationship with Counsell. I don't know if Craig Counsell wants to be in New York. Does he come off as that kind of guy? I don't know. Everybody's assuming he'll just take the job. Right. I don't know if when a guy's been in Milwaukee and that kind of atmosphere and kind of been in that underdog role, I don't know if he's willing to jump ship to go to New York and kind of deal with the trash that is the Mets organization.
I think it's not just that too. It's lifestyle and everything. I mean, Milwaukee's, you can walk down the street. It's a little different than going to New York too. So everyone seems to want to be in New York. If I had the option, sorry, New York, I would not go to New York.
Yeah.
That's me. But, I think everyone has to make that determination. But I don't think it's a slam dunk merely because it's New York.
And they can offer more money than anything. But I think Milwaukee, I'm willing to pay up if I'm the Brewers. They make money, and they're not going to spend it on free agent hitters.
Right.
If I'm a Milwaukee fan and they don't spend it on somebody like Counsell, who's had this level of success, who knows the scene, you keep that continuity, who's been, give them the extra, and you don't have to match the Mets, but hell, with cost of living, you don't really need to come out ahead. So I hope the Brewers can play some ball here. We just got, me talking about baseball here has allowed us, Ray, to close with this note. We now have the starter for the Falcons, and, he's not drawing up living wills, but he is drawing up plays for a new quarterback this week, right?
He is. That's right. Everyone in those super flex leagues, get those bids in for Tyler Heinicke. Ian Rappaport's reporting that he will start. That's what we know right now. We haven't had a chance to see the post pregame conference, but the coaching conference, whatever I'm trying to say. So I don't know if it's a 1 week thing. I don't know if it's a long-term thing, but for this week, Taylor Heinicke, will be the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons.
He's a sugar rush kind of guy. He can have moments. I think his seal, like when he's on, is better than Ritter. But Taylor Heinicke, we saw it with Washington. It's up and down. He had fumble issues as well, just like Ritter. There's a reason the Commanders, who haven't had a quarterback for 25 years, weren't interested in Tyler. So we'll see. It may work. The matchup against Minnesota is not imposing. You mentioned Superflex. It's not the worst idea to go in his direction. Like we said with Dobbs, there's talent in Atlanta. You got Bijan, you've got Kyle Pitts. We have to see on Drake London, by the way. He was dealing with an injury late last week. But we do have the news that Taylor Heinicke is the guy for the Falcons this Sunday. Okay, no better way to close it down, Ray. Good stuff on a Wednesday. We'll do it again tomorrow. Okay, buddy?
Yeah, looking forward to it. And remember, FSD20 is that promo code over at FantasyGuru.com if you want to get a 20% discount on any of the products in all the sports, not just football, in all the sports we have to offer at FantasyGuru.com.
And we're back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern. By that point, Ray and his tech team may have us available in all sorts of different formats. So we'll see what Ray and the crowd come up with today. We'll tell you about that tomorrow. Thanks for listening. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for downloading. However you consume us, we do appreciate it. Check out all the great stuff at FantasyGuru.com. Tomorrow, more football. We'll get you set for that Thursday nighter from a DFS perspective. Probably going to say hello to Ryan Clifford to talk a little Titans and Steelers. We may even sneak a little EPL onto the agenda for tomorrow. We'll do it then. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you on Thursday with Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com.